The cadaver dog abruptly halted at the foot of the ravine, unwilling to proceed. "Storm, what is it?" Officer Klaus Kinski inquired, but the dog remained stationary. Shortly thereafter, they arrived at a clearing, and Storm's discovery left every individual stunned. A ranger's deceased body chained to a tree, the victim of murder, but that wasn't the most unsettling aspect. It was Storm's subsequent action that defied explanation. So what transpired in that forest? Please subscribe and leave a comment indicating your viewing location. Let's begin. The fluorescent lights of the county sheriff's department hummed quietly as Officer Klaus Kinski packed his gear at 5:15 a.m. The early morning silence was punctuated only by the steady breathing of Storm, his German Shepherd partner, who sat at perfect attention nearby, his dark, intelligent eyes fixed on his handler's movements. "Ready for another day, buddy?" Klaus asked, gently scratching behind Storm's ears. The dog's tail thumped against the floor once, a quiet expression of his enthusiasm. Unlike other K9s who might bark or prance, Storm had always been remarkably composed, almost dignified in his responses. At 5 years old, the German Shepherd had already earned near legendary status within the department. His ability to detect remains was remarkable, often locating them in cases where other dogs and advanced technology had been unsuccessful. 3 months prior, he had found the body of a missing hiker beneath a landslide that had significantly altered the terrain. Just 2 weeks earlier, he had followed the scent of human remains through a flash-flooded canyon, guiding recovery teams to a body that would have otherwise been lost to the sea. A strong bond formed between Klaus and Storm when they were partnered 18 months ago, yet Klaus occasionally sensed a certain enigmatic quality in his partner, levels of intelligence and awareness surpassing even the most expertly trained police dogs he'd worked with before. Klaus's phone vibrated with a message from Sheriff Dawson. "My office now, possible missing person." "Let's go, Storm," Klaus instructed gently, attaching the lead to Storm's working harness. The dog moved with a smooth, controlled grace alongside him through the station's hushed hallways. Sheriff Dawson glanced up from his desk as they entered, his face etched with concern. Forest ranger missing. Jacob Ramsey, 42, a seasoned outdoorsman, failed to report in after his patrol 3 days ago. His truck was discovered left at the Thunder Ridge trailhead. "Any leads?" Klaus inquired, taking the file folder that Dawson offered. "Nothing definite," Dawson replied. "Rangers have conducted initial searches, but the area is extensive. They required Storm," Klaus acknowledged, reviewing Ramsey's file. A respected conservationist with 15 years of experience with the Forest Service, specializing in wildlife protection. Dawson added a further detail. Ramsey had experienced conflicts with poachers in the north section and had submitted reports concerning several individuals, including Tony Tips. He was a dangerous person with a criminal record. Klaus observed Storm, who appeared calm, but seemed subtly more vigilant upon hearing about the missing ranger. A peculiar coincidence occurred when Storm was assigned to Klaus approximately 18 months prior, via a contact within the Forest Service. The transfer documentation was ambiguous, stating only that Storm's previous handler had, with some hesitation, released him to the K-9 program due to his remarkable abilities being unsuitable for a personal companion role. Forest Service headquarters experienced a period of heightened activity when Klaus arrived 30 minutes subsequently. Storm emerged from the truck, instantly using his nose to assess the mountain air. Rangers gathered around maps displayed on a folding table sheltered by a canopy, their expressions etched with concern. After 3 days of absence, they were now searching for either a fortunate survivor or a deceased individual. Officer Kinski, a tall woman dressed in a ranger uniform, stepped forward. "I'm Chief Ranger Marissa Ling. Thank you for attending," she said. Klaus responded. "What was the most recent verified sighting of Ranger Ramsey?" On Tuesday morning, while beginning a routine patrol of the Thunder Basin area, Ling responded, indicating a northeastern portion of the map. His focus was on investigating reports of illegal trapping. They located his truck at this position, although the trails diverged in 5 directions. Storm remained focused as Klaus presented Ramsey's uniform shirt for him to analyze, his nostrils widening as he registered the missing ranger's scent. Klaus was struck by Storm's immediate intensity, not only in his professional focus, but also by a deeper, almost personal determination. He seems particularly driven today, Ling noted. Dark clouds gathered against the mountain peaks as two ranger guides led Klaus and Storm to the trailhead where Ramsey's truck had been found. Recent rainstorms had turned sections of the trail to mud, potentially washing away scents and evidence. Klaus released Storm's tracking lead, instructing him to search. Find him, Storm. The German Shepherd commenced his systematic grid pattern, utilizing his sense of smell. 20 minutes elapsed during the search when Storm abruptly raised his head, analyzing the air, then turned sharply eastward, departing from the designated search area. He possessed something, Klaus called to the rangers, hurrying to keep pace as Storm pulled them deeper into a dense section of forest, down a seldom-traveled ravine where sunlight barely penetrated the canopy. The forest grew denser as they descended, centuries-old trees forming a cathedral-like canopy that muted even the birds' calls. Storm moved with increasing urgency, his methodical search pattern transforming into determined pursuit. Klaus struggled to keep pace, observing that the terrain grew steeper and more treacherous, a route no one would choose willingly. He's tracking like he's on a mission, one of the rangers commented, breathing heavily while navigating down a particularly steep section. I've worked with search dogs before but have never seen this level of focus. Klaus nodded, keeping his eyes on Storm's tail as it disappeared around a massive fallen tree. He usually works in a precise grid pattern. This was different. He seemed to know precisely his destination. The temperature decreased significantly as they went further down into the ravine, the air thick with the smell of moist soil and rotting plants. Storm stopped sometimes at intersections, sniffing the air before proceeding with resolute confidence. Suddenly, Storm's behavior altered considerably. The shepherd stopped, his hair standing on end, a quiet moan rising from his throat. Over 5 years of partnership, Klaus had never witnessed such a reaction from his typically composed partner. Storm? Klaus approached with caution, worried by this unusual behavior. The dog trembled slightly, then advanced more slowly, guiding them toward a small clearing. When they pushed through the undergrowth, Klaus saw it, a massive oak tree standing alone in the center of the space, and chained to its trunk, the unmistakable form of a human body. We've got a body, Klaus radioed, his heart sinking as he neared, locating the scene approximately half a mile east of Search Grid C. The victim, wearing Forest Service khakis, was slumped against the tree trunk, arms pulled behind and secured with chains wrapped multiple times around the tree. Multiple stab wounds marked the chest and abdomen. Blood had collected and dried in the dirt below. Death had not been swift or painless. What followed shocked those present. Despite usually exhibiting impeccable composure at death scenes, Storm deviated from established procedure. The shepherd approached the body, whimpering a sound Klaus had never heard from him before, and began gently nuzzling the ranger's limp hand. "Storm, back!" Klaus commanded, shocked by this breach of training. For the first time in their partnership, Storm disregarded a direct order. He stayed near the body, his demeanor shifting from that of a trained canine to something different, deeply saddened, appearing almost human in his distress. As the recovery team began to move the body, Klaus observed his partner with increasing worry, a thought taking shape. Storm wasn't exhibiting the behavior of a cadaver dog that had successfully found a target. He was acting as if he's discovered a companion. A technician carefully examined the victim's pockets, recovering a wallet. Jacob Ramsey of the Forest Service confirmed his identity, displaying his ID card. The photograph depicted a man in his early 40s, possessing gentle eyes, a tanned and weathered face, and a well-kept beard. When Klaus saw the photo clearly, his heart skipped a beat. A wave of recognition struck him with considerable force. "Can't be," he murmured, looking from the ID photo to Storm. Klaus then knelt beside Storm, presenting the ID card so the dog could see it. Storm responded instantly, a quiet whine escaping him. His nose softly touched the photo protected by plastic. Storm had been transferred to our K-9 unit from a contact within the Forest Service, who was no longer able to keep him despite their connection. Klaus provided the explanation, and everything clicked. The documentation stated his previous handler relinquished him because his detection skills were too remarkable to be used for personal companionship. He needed to be deployed in service. A realization spread among those present. Klaus confirmed that Ramsey was Storm's original handler, and the dog's unusual behavior now seemed understandable. He relinquished Ramsey so Storm could work with the sheriff's department. Standing alone with Storm beside Ramsey's body, Klaus whispered, "I'm sorry, buddy. I'm so sorry." The shepherd leaned against him, seeking comfort in a way he never had before. "We'll find who did this," Klaus promised, both to Storm and to the man who had loved him enough to let him go. "I swear it." While the medical examiner made arrangements to transport Ramsey's body, Klaus allowed Storm the necessary space and time. The shepherd continued his mournful vigil, sometimes touching the ranger's hand. The experienced officers and medical staff worked silently, moved by the dog's clear sorrow. Suddenly, Storm's head jerked up, his nose working rapidly. His distressed appearance disappeared, giving way to the concentrated focus Klaus knew from their tracking assignments. The change was sudden, so thorough that those nearby observed it. "What's happening?" one of the rangers asked. "He's found something," Klaus responded, observing as Storm circled the tree where Ramsey had been chained. "He's scenting." Unexpectedly, Storm fixated on a scent trail and sped toward the northern edge of the clearing, almost wrenching the lead from Klaus's grip. "He's tracking someone," Klaus exclaimed, exerting himself to keep up as Storm raced through the underbrush. Could this be our killer's trail? They advanced further into the forest, Storm assisting them up a steep incline, through a thick area of mountain laurel, and across a small stream. Despite the difficult ground and the time passed since the murder, Storm showed no hesitation, never losing the scent. The trail led them to a small valley where a creek ran through the landscape. The dog's pace finally lessened as they neared a small clearing positioned against a rock face. Evidence of recent human presence was immediately visible. A makeshift campsite with a fire's remains, discarded food wrappers, and trampled grass indicating where someone had slept. Storm examined the campsite carefully, then paused, becoming very still and alert. He remained motionless near the fire pit's remains, observing an area where several larger stones created a rough circle around the ashes. "He has something," Klaus said softly, approaching cautiously to prevent damage to any potential evidence. Storm remained motionless, signaling that he had discovered something important. Klaus approached the fire pit and carefully inspected the area Storm had indicated. Initially, he observed nothing out of the ordinary, simply stones, ash, and dirt. However, upon closer inspection of the stone arrangement, he detected a subtle discoloration in the soil near a notably large rock. Concealed beneath it, and partially embedded in the loose earth, was a hunting knife featuring a unique carved handle. Even in the muted forest light, dark stains were visible on the blade. "He found the murder weapon," Klaus said with quiet amazement. Looking at Storm with newfound respect, through rain and days of weather, he tracked the killer's trail and led us right to the key evidence. Storm remained in his alert position, not moving a muscle even as additional officers began arriving at the scene. His composure was remarkable, particularly given the emotional weight of the search. Although he clearly had ties to Ramsey, and despite experiencing prior sorrow, he had consistently adhered to strict evidence preservation protocols. "I've never encountered anything comparable," confessed Hartman, as the forensics team meticulously excavated and processed the knife. "Typically, human suspects falter under emotional strain. Your dog transformed it into focus for the investigation." Klaus nodded, observing as the knife was carefully placed in an evidence bag. The technician's initial assessment corroborated the apparent evidence. Blood was present in the handle's grooves and on the blade, aligning with the injuries sustained by Ramsey. "We need to send this to the lab for DNA verification," the lead technician stated. "I'd wager my pension this is your murder weapon." Hartman inquired, "Any fingerprints?" "Possible partial prints on the handle," the technician responded. "If we're fortunate, whoever committed this act was inattentive." Returning to the sheriff's department, a sense of intense concentration permeated the atmosphere as forensics examined the evidence Storm had located. Klaus remained at his desk, studying Ramsey's case file, While Storm rested at his feet, the shepherd's gaze seldom leaving his handler's face. Despite still exhibiting signs of the day's occurrences, Storm had transitioned to a watchful composure, seemingly anticipating the next step in their assignment. Klaus's phone sounded, Detective Hartman calling from the lab. The print analysis came back positive. Tony Tips, with a history of poaching convictions, assault charges, and criminal trespass, is identified. He's been a person of interest for Ramsey for several months. Tips, Klaus stated, reviewing the documentation to locate the name. Ramsey had previously submitted 3 reports concerning Tips within the last year, each documenting illegal trapping within protected areas. That establishes our probable cause, Hartman affirmed. Revenge. Additionally, forensic testing confirmed the blood found on the knife is consistent with Ramsey's blood type. We possess sufficient evidence to obtain an arrest warrant. Surveillance images of Tony Tips depicted a man in his mid-30s, characterized by a shaggy beard, intense eyes, and a weathered complexion indicative of a difficult life. Security footage indicated his truck was traveling towards Thunder Basin on the morning Ramsey disappeared, and then departing that night. This timeline aligned precisely with the murder. As twilight cast the mountains in amber light, the tactical team established positions around Tips's secluded cabin. Klaus and Storm waited concealed behind a group of pine trees. 50 yards from the back door, the shepherd's body language displayed controlled tension, remaining perfectly still except for his eyes following the movements of the officers surrounding the property. The SWAT team moved with practiced efficiency, converging on the cabin from multiple angles. Sheriff's Department, search warrant, echoed across the clearing as they breached the front door. Almost immediately, a crash sounded from the rear of the cabin, followed by a shout over the radio. A suspect was fleeing out the back window, east side. Prior to the commander being able to issue new orders, a figure burst through the back door. Tony Tips, holding a backpack, and running directly toward the dense forest behind his property. Klaus made a split-second decision, unclipping Storm's lead and giving the command they trained for countless times. Storm, apprehend. The shepherd launched forward like a missile, covering the ground between them and the fleeing suspect with breathtaking speed. Tips heard the approaching dog and glanced back, his face showing terror as he saw 80 pounds of focused German shepherd closing the distance. Stop! Police! Klaus shouted, running behind Storm with his weapon drawn. Tips ignored the command, increasing his efforts to reach the tree line, but he was unable to escape. Storm closed the final distance with a powerful leap, striking Tips between the shoulder blades and sending him crashing face first into the dirt. Tony Tips, you're under arrest for the murder of Forest Ranger Jacob Ramsey, Klaus announced formally, reciting the Miranda rights as Tips was helped to his feet. I didn't kill nobody, Tips retorted, though his eyes moved around anxiously. Don't know what you're talking about. However, his demeanor shifted when he saw Storm, a brief moment of recognition followed by evident apprehension. That's Ramsey's dog, he mumbled almost to himself. What the hell? The interrogation room at the sheriff's department was intentionally plain. It featured bare walls, a metal table fixed to the floor, and uncomfortable chairs. Tips sat hunched on one side, his hands cuffed, as Detective Hartman presented the evidence against him. Klaus cautiously guided Storm to the department's dedicated K-9 area, a protected room with soft bedding, water, and recognizable toys. Stay, Storm, I will return shortly, he said, engaging the door's safety latch. During the observation, Klaus witnessed Hartman's confrontation with Tips. Hartman presented the evidence. The knife discovered at the campsite bearing Tips' fingerprints and blood matching Ramsey's type, alongside camera footage of his truck near the scene. It wasn't supposed to go like that, Tips eventually confessed, leaning forward. I just wanted to scare him, teach him a lesson about messing with my traps. While Tips recounted the altercation, describing how he'd surprised Ramsey on the trail and how the situation escalated, a disturbance arose from within the building. A K-9 unit was reported loose over the radio, having escaped from the secure area. Storm appeared around the corner, moving purposefully and disregarding the officers trying to contain him. In a departure from their usual dynamic, Storm bypassed Klaus entirely, his attention solely fixed on the interrogation room door. The shepherd slammed against the door, managing to force it open despite its solid build. Tips and Hartman looked up, startled, as 80 pounds of intense energy flooded the room. The subsequent events appeared to play out in slow motion. Storm swiftly moved across the area with alarming accuracy, overturning the table completely, his objective clear. Tips scarcely had time to lift his hands before the shepherd connected with his face, sending both of them tumbling to the floor. "Get him off! Get him off!" Tips yelled as Storm's jaws latched onto his cheek and forehead, the attack appearing targeted and deliberate. Klaus and Hartman both reacted instantly, seizing Storm and attempting to pull him away. "Storm, release! Release now!" Klaus ordered, using all the authority in his voice. For several tense seconds, Storm held on, then finally obeyed Klaus's repeated commands, loosening his grip and stepping back, his muzzle smeared with blood. "He tried to attack me." Screams echoed through the pain. "That dog, Storm, tried to attack me." Storm was immediately placed in mandatory isolation while Tips received medical treatment for his injuries. The reality of their situation was serious. Police K9s who attacked without command faced a standardized response, often euthanasia, regardless of circumstances. "Tips is getting 20 stitches, Sheriff Dawson informed Klaus grimly. "He's already threatening legal action, demanding Storm be put down immediately." "He broke the case," Klaus stated, desperation evident in his voice. "Found the body, tracked the evidence, located the murder weapon, and then attacked a handcuffed suspect in custody." Dawson concluded firmly. "The evidence collection is now potentially compromised." By 9 a.m. the following morning, the department's conference room had been converted into a makeshift hearing chamber. A long table at the front seated Chief Jenkins from County, Sheriff Dawson, and the department's legal counsel. Various officers, Forest Service personnel, and administrative staff were seated in rows to observe the proceedings. Storm was brought in by a neutral handler, adhering to department protocol for K9s under review, and secured to a fixed point at the room's side. Despite the circumstances, he remained perfectly composed, exhibiting a professional demeanor, a sharp contrast to yesterday's violence. As Klaus entered, Storm's focus instantly shifted to him, yet he held the precise stance he had been instructed to maintain. "This disciplinary hearing is now in session," Chief Jenkins declared, his voice reflecting 30 years of experience in law enforcement. "We are here to examine the incident involving K9 Officer Storm and decide on suitable measures in line with department procedures." Klaus had spent a sleepless night preparing his statement, collecting Storm service records, and contacting K9 training specialists who could potentially assist their case. He had known Storm for only 18 months of the dog's 5-year career, but during that time, they had become inseparable partners whose combined skills had resolved dozens of cases. Detective Hartman detailed the events in the interrogation room, and then the department veterinarian reported having examined Storm and finding no physical distress or illness that could account for the behavior. While other officers testified to Storm's excellent history, a department officer entered and presented Sheriff Dawson with a document. "Chief Jenkins," Dawson announced, "we've just received pertinent information. Tony Tips has provided a full confession regarding the murder of Jacob Ramsey." This morning, Dawson informed the surprised board that Tips requested to speak with detectives without his attorney. He relinquished his rights and provided a detailed confession, including evidence of premeditation. Tips stated that seeing Storm prompted his confession. Jenkins, reviewing the statement, commented that dog knew. "Somehow it knew exactly what I did to Ramsey." Following almost an hour of testimonies, which included an unexpected video statement from Storm's original trainer, the board adjourned to deliberate. 20 minutes passed before they reconvened with their decision. After examining the evidence and the circumstances, Jenkins stated, "This board has decided that although K9 Officer Storm's actions broke procedure, the unique qualities of this case require leniency. Storm will be placed on probationary status for 3 months, during which he will undergo intensive retraining. Officer Kinski will also complete advanced handler certification focused on emotional management in working K9s." Relief flooded through Klaus as the verdict was announced. Following the probationary period, Storm would be reevaluated for return to full duty. The board acknowledged both the severity of the protocol violation and the extraordinary circumstances surrounding it. Jenkins stated that the decision recognized the seriousness of the protocol violation and the unusual circumstances involved. The board also acknowledged Storm's outstanding service record and the specific situation arising from his relationship with the victim. As the crowd started to leave, Ranger Chief Ling spoke to Klaus. "Jacob would be proud," she said softly. He relinquished Storm because he was convinced the dog's capabilities could save lives and deliver justice to victims. Today confirmed his belief. "I wish I'd known him," Klaus said, observing the neutral handler readying Storm for his return. Storm embodies his training and his impact in all that he does. Link expressed sadness as Jacob transferred Storm to the K9 program. He described it as relinquishing a part of himself, yet acknowledged that certain partnerships hold such significance they must be shared for a wider benefit. As the hearing ended, Klaus detached Storm from the anchor, allowing him to stand openly beside him again. The shepherd's demeanor remained impeccable, but a nuance in his stance hinted at comprehension, possibly even contentment, with the result. "Ready to return, partner?" Klaus inquired gently. Storm raised his gaze, his knowing eyes conveying a message deeper than simple words, more than just loyalty or relief, but a profound connection forged by their shared experience. Justice had been achieved for both Jacob Ramsey and Storm. Tony Tips had confessed and would face the consequences of his actions. Klaus, meanwhile, had gained a deeper appreciation for the remarkable bond between handlers and their K9 partners, a connection that sometimes transcended human understanding, bridging not just species, but time and loss as well. Have you ever witnessed an animal demonstrate extraordinary loyalty to someone from their past? The enduring relationship between Storm and his previous handler serves as a powerful illustration of how animal bonds can persist despite separation, revealing an emotional complexity often undervalued. Do you believe your pet possesses the capacity to assess character, even if their responses appear dramatic? Considering the circumstances, would a disciplinary committee have offered Storm another opportunity following his attack on the murderer? The distinction between instinct and justice can be unclear when we examine the impressive capabilities of these highly trained K9 officers. If Storm's story resonated with you, please like the video and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary K9 tales. Tap the notification bell to ensure you don't miss our new uploads. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate the remarkable bond between handlers and their K9 partners. Don't miss our other K9 tarot stories currently displaying. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video. A search dog persistently circled a location within the forest, disregarding commands. "Control your animal," the sergeant ordered. When they finally excavated at the spot she indicated, the discovery beneath the soil stunned the entire search team. Before we delve into today's narrative, please share in the comments where you're watching from. And if you appreciate remarkable police dogs and stories like this one, be sure to subscribe. Prepare for what's about to unfold. The early morning fog lay over Rockwell National Forest, resembling a ghostly veil, changing the tall pines into shadowy sentinels. Officer Lydia Mercer adjusted her jacket against the autumn chill as she looked over the training area, her breath appearing as small clouds in the cool air. Next to her, Aspen, her 5-year-old German shepherd, remained watchful. Dark ears stood erect in anticipation, intelligent eyes examining the tree line. "The weather is ideal for scent work today," observed Sergeant Dominic Carter, as he came forward with a clipboard. "The humidity is keeping the odors close to the ground, which should make today's exercise straightforward for Aspen." Lydia nodded, making adjustments to the specialized search vest on Aspen's muscular frame. "She's been restless all morning. I believe she understands that this is not just another training day." Nearby, for additional canine teams readied themselves for the exercise, handlers inspecting gear as their dogs exhibited different levels of composure. The sound of autumn leaves crackling resonated with each step as Sergeant Carter assembled the group for a concluding briefing. "We've positioned 6 training aids within this quadrant," he stated, spreading a topographical map across the hood of his department SUV. These aids consist of standard human remains scent pads, buried at varying depths and exposed to diverse environmental conditions. The focus was on precision, not haste. Lydia maintained a measured distance, clipboard ready, observing Aspen execute her established search pattern. The shepherd proceeded with deliberate skill, moving in a quartering pattern against the wind, her nose constantly analyzing the air for the slightest indication of the scent of human remains. After 30 minutes of the training, Aspen had already found 2 of the training aids, correctly indicating each discovery while Lydia recorded the positions. The forest's difficulty increased as they progressed, with thick undergrowth and fallen trees forming natural barriers. Abruptly, Aspen's consistent behavior shifted. The dog's head rose quickly, her nose working intensely as she analyzed the scents. Unexpectedly, she turned sharply to the left, deviating from their designated search zone. Aspen, this way, Lydia called, employing the hand signal to guide her partner. For the first time in their 3 years together, Aspen disregarded the command entirely. The shepherd proceeded with growing urgency, pushing through a dense thicket of brambles toward an area that wasn't part of the training ground. Her body language had changed, tail straight, muscles tense, ears rigidly forward. Aspen, Lydia called more sharply, a flutter of concern replacing her initial irritation. This wasn't like her partner at all. Far away, Sergeant Carter's gaze met hers, his face changing from interest to concern as Aspen strayed from the planned route. Lydia activated her radio. "Sergeant, Aspen is signaling something outside our designated zone. I'm proceeding to check it out." The quick reply came, "Negative, Mercer. Return your dog and stick to the designated path. We need to adhere to our timetable." Lydia paused, observing as Aspen entered an open space approximately 70 yards past their assigned boundaries. The dog started circling a particular spot close to a group of fallen trees, her actions growing more frantic. Then Aspen did something she had been specifically trained not to do. She began to dig, her front paws striking the ground with desperate intensity. "Something's wrong," Lydia murmured, starting to run toward her partner. By the time she arrived at the clearing, Aspen was whining, a high-pitched sound of distress as she circled and returned to dig at the same spot. Sergeant Carter arrived shortly thereafter, his expression showing displeasure. "Officer Mercer, this is not acceptable. Control your—" His sentence was cut off as he observed Aspen's actions more carefully. 20 years of experience with dogs told him this wasn't disobedience or inattention. "That's not a training reaction," he said softly, his eyes focusing on the area where Aspen continued to circle and dig. "That's a genuine alert. Get me a shovel," Lydia said to a nearby trainee, keeping her gaze fixed on Aspen, who continued circling and pawing at the ground with increasing urgency. The dog's actions had changed from excited to nearly frantic, her whines growing more insistent. The trainee brought 2 shovels, and Lydia started carefully removing layers of soil and forest debris where Aspen pointed. At a depth of 6 inches, she observed the initial inconsistency, roots that had been neatly severed instead of naturally winding around obstructions. The soil composition also differed, exhibiting less density compared to the adjacent ground. "Someone has excavated here previously," she stated softly, making eye contact with Carter, whose doubt was diminishing quickly. They persisted in digging, establishing a broader area around Aspen's designated location. The atmosphere felt denser with every layer of soil unearthed. The sounds of the forest appeared to diminish as their attention centered on the work. 12 inches down, Lydia's shovel hit something that wasn't stone or root. The muted impact sent a shiver up her spine. "Wait," she said, her voice a near whisper. She paused instantly, dropping to her knees next to the small excavation. Using gloved hands, she began carefully clearing away the remaining earth, applying the meticulous technique she'd acquired in evidence recovery training. A hush fell over the officers present. The only sound was Aspen's rhythmic breathing as she stood motionless at the grave's edge, her posture rigid with conviction. One trainee officer averted his gaze, unable to witness the ongoing excavation. "Oh God," Lydia murmured, her gloved fingers brushing against what were undeniably human fingers, partially decomposed but distinctly identifiable. The pallid complexion stood out sharply against the dark soil, the truth of their find undeniable. A look of shock drained the color from Carter's face. His previous doubts vanished. He recoiled, retrieving his radio with a hand that shook subtly despite his extensive background. "This is Sergeant Carter at the Northeast Training Grounds," he stated, his voice maintaining professionalism but strained. "We have a 10 to 29 possible human remains. I require the on-call detective, forensics, and county coroner to my GPS location without delay. Coordinates to follow." Aspen stayed near the graveside, her stance watchful but now more relaxed, as though content that her message had been received. Lydia put a comforting hand on the shepherd's shoulder, a wordless recognition of her dedication. Shortly after, the tranquil forest clearing transformed into a center of organized action. Yellow crime scene tape defined a broad boundary around the discovery location, and officers commenced recording the scene through photographs and written observations. Detective Marcus Whitley arrived 30 minutes later, his department SUV traveling along the narrow Forest Service road to reach the scene. The tall, broad-shouldered detective, having worked with canine teams previously, immediately adhered to the perimeter protocols as he approached. "What do we have?" he asked, putting on latex gloves. "Human remains, Detective," Carter reported, noting they were initially discovered by Officer Mercer's cadaver dog during training. A single hand was observed, approximately 14 inches beneath the surface. The forensic team responded quickly, deploying portable lighting despite the midday hour. The thick forest canopy resulted in a dim, twilight-like atmosphere on the forest floor. During the continued, careful excavation, the situation's severity became apparent. The remains of a young male, believed to be in his teens, were discovered in a shallow grave obscured by forest debris, apparently in an attempt to hide it. Based on decomposition, an estimated 3 to 4 months had passed, the county medical examiner observed, meticulously examining the visible remains without disrupting the crime scene. No apparent cause of death was immediately evident. Detective Whitley surveyed the area with focused precision, his experienced eyes registering every detail as the forensic team continued their careful excavation. "Officer Mercer," he said, gesturing Lydia closer to the gravesite, "tell me about your dog's initial alert. Was there something peculiar about the scene?" Lydia nodded, holding Aspen's leash tightly. She disregarded procedure entirely, an action she had never taken in her 3 years of work and training, disobeyed instructions, left the designated search area, and led us directly here. Her alert was pronounced. Frantic digging, circling, vocalizations, the typical signs of a cadaver location, but with an unusual degree of urgency. Aspen had stayed focused, her gaze moving between the grave and a spot several yards to the east. Lydia observed Aspen's body language, understanding there was additional evidence to uncover. While trained in human remains detection, she was also known to be discerning, Lydia clarified. She possesses the ability to differentiate between the primary source and any secondary evidence connected to it. Whitley acknowledged this with a nod. "Show me," Lydia requested. She adjusted her hold on Aspen's lead. "Find more, Aspen. Show me." Releasing Aspen from the sit-stay command, the dog instantly moved toward the eastern boundary of the clearing, nose close to the ground. She halted suddenly, pointing to a particular place under a fallen log with the identical focused sitting position she employed in training. Forensic technicians meticulously examined the area, discovering a cigarette butt lodged between the log and the forest floor. 6 feet beyond, Aspen alerted once more, leading them to a blood-stained handkerchief partly concealed under leaves. "Collect those separately and label them as possible DNA sources," Whitley directed. A burgeoning respect shone in his eyes as he observed Aspen work. "That dog is worth her weight in gold." As the afternoon progressed, the victim was fully excavated, revealing the body of a teenage boy. No obvious wounds were visible through his clothing, but the unnatural position suggested trauma prior to death. While the search teams organized their grid pattern, Lydia took a moment to give Aspen a water break in a quiet spot away from the center of activity. Lydia observed her partner and couldn't help but consider the remarkable path that had united them 3 years earlier. The shepherd had originally been involved in a military working dog program, trained by former Marine Master Sergeant Reed Calloway, who had served with the Corps Elite Forensic Investigation Unit. Calloway had become known for developing dogs with exceptional scent discrimination abilities, driven by a personal tragedy. He's too independent, Calloway had told Lydia, introducing her to the intense-eyed shepherd who sat watching them with unnerving focus. Follows her nose instead of commands when she believes she's right. Military handlers want predictability above all else. Lydia had seen something different. Not defiance, but extraordinary conviction. Where others saw a problematic canine, she recognized a dog with rare gifts that simply needed the right partner. A deep and instant bond formed, with Aspen reacting to Lydia's careful approach in ways that surprised even Calloway. She requires someone who will trust her when she deviates from established procedures, for valid reasons, he observed, watching their initial collaboration. She is invariably correct when she departs from the planned course. She's simply interpreting scent information beyond human perception. The specialized training Calloway had created incorporated methods seldom employed in typical police canine programs, instructing dogs to identify minute quantities of human decomposition, amounts nearly impossible for instruments to register, to differentiate between various human odors at a location, and to operate autonomously while tracking intricate scent pathways. At the command post, situated on the Forest Service Road, Detective Whitley had created a temporary investigative hub within his SUV. The laptop screen showed a database of missing persons reports while he compared information from the crime scene. Male, Caucasian, around 16 to 18 years old. Athletic build, he said, adjusting the search filters. The search included records from the last 4 months within a 100-mile radius. Lydia came over after arranging for Aspen to work with the search team coordinator. Any matches? Whitley responded somberly, angling the screen so she could see. 3 possibilities, but this one looks most likely. Ryan Hollister, age 17, has been missing for 4 months. He was last seen hiking in Crestwood Park, approximately 20 miles southeast of here. The image shown was of a smiling teenager with sandy brown hair and a scattering of freckles on his nose. He was wearing a Letterman jacket from Westlake High School, matching the bright blue color of the worn backpack discovered with the remains. Crestwood is 20 miles from here, Lydia noted. How could he have been located in Rockwell Forest? That's the question, Whitley affirmed, scrolling through the original missing persons report. The report indicated that Ryan was an experienced hiker, Eagle Scout, and member of his school's cross-country team. He was not the kind of person to become lost or stray that far from the trail. A forensic technician approached, presenting a sealed evidence bag containing the recovered backpack. Detective, we discovered a student ID in the side pocket, partially degraded but still readable. Whitley scrutinized the plastic identification card visible within the clear evidence bag, then glanced at his screen. Ryan Hollister, Westlake High. It was him. He promptly reached for his phone. I need to contact the family, he stated. They've been waiting for answers for 4 months. The initial investigation had been entirely centered on Crestwood Park, based on the assumption that Ryan had experienced an accident or became lost. The possibility of foul play hadn't been considered, and no one had envisioned searching in a separate forest several miles away. This wasn't a hiking accident, Lydia stated softly, glancing towards the crime scene. Someone deliberately buried him here, far from where anyone would expect to look. As daylight diminished, portable lights shone on the forest clearing as the broadened search effort continued. 3 more 9 teams joined to help, each with unique skills. To ensure accuracy, tracking and evidence detection protocols were implemented, with a second HRD dog deployed to validate Aspen's findings. Lydia and Aspen spearheaded a team moving north from the grave site. The shepherd demonstrated renewed vigor despite the considerable hours already invested. Aspen's speed increased, her tail position signaling heightened anticipation, as they traversed a thick stand of pine trees. The ground declined gradually towards a small, naturally occurring clearing approximately half a mile from the burial site. Signs of recent camping were evident. Officer Ramirez, one of the evidence technicians, was observed shining his flashlight on a fire ring constructed from rocks. Around it, partially buried in leaves and dirt, were discarded beer cans, food wrappers, and the remains of a temporary campsite. The shepherd noted several beer cans near the fire ring, indicating significant evidence. As technicians documented the items with photographs and secured them in bags, Aspen proceeded to the clearing's perimeter, observing faint tire tracks in a muddy area shielded from exposure by overhanging branches. "What have we got?" Whitley inquired upon his arrival. "Campsite recently used but deliberately obscured," Ramirez reported. "Discarded beer cans, a fire pit, signs of several people, and these tire tracks indicate they drove in via the old logging road instead of hiking from the trails." Aspen continued, examining the clearing's boundary, then abruptly signaled intensely near a pile of rocks on the eastern edge. With careful attention, the evidence technicians removed the rocks individually, revealing a cell phone. The screen was shattered, but the device remained otherwise undamaged. The item was intentionally concealed under the rock pile, contained within a plastic bag that shielded it from moisture. The forest investigation persisted throughout the night and extended into the following morning, with teams operating in shifts to manage the expanding crime scene. Initial DNA analysis confirmed the blood on the handkerchief corresponded to Ryan Hollister's blood type, and the tech team had retrieved text messages, photos, and location data from the period leading up to his disappearance. The photographs depicted 4 teenagers at the campsite they found yesterday. Ryan Hollister was easily recognizable, smiling with 3 other boys. They were consuming beer near the campfire, appearing relaxed and lively. This directly conflicts with the accounts his friends provided to the police. Whitley stated, "They asserted they had called off the trip and Ryan went alone. These photos demonstrate that all 4 of them were present together." The medical examiner finished the initial examination, establishing the cause of death as blunt force trauma to the back of the skull, a single forceful impact from a rounded object. A fractured cheekbone was also present, indicating a physical confrontation prior to the fatal injury. While arrangements proceeded for the afternoon's interrogations, an unforeseen development emerged. Park Ranger Caleb Sullivan. The veteran ranger, having heard the discovery over the radio, instantly identified the location based on the provided coordinates. "Approximately 4 months ago, around early June, I came across a group of young men camping without authorization in that precise clearing," Sullivan recounted. "There were 4 teenagers, all male. They possessed a lifted Jeep Wrangler, painted bright red and equipped with oversized tires." He continued, "I addressed them regarding the unlawful camping and vehicle use on a closed road. Did you observe anything out of the ordinary in their behavior?" Whitley insisted. The ranger paused, appearing to consider the situation. "They seemed anxious, which I attributed to being caught in violation of the regulations. A particular detail was noticeable. They possessed a significant amount of camping equipment, but it appeared largely unused. Tents remained packed, sleeping bags were rolled, yet their fire had been active for some time, and numerous empty beer cans were present. They were preparing to depart quickly," Lydia proposed. "Precisely," Sullivan affirmed. "I believed they were simply startled by the apprehension of being discovered." He hesitated, the unspoken thought hanging in the air. Whitley displayed yearbook photos of Ryan's 3 friends on his laptop. "Do any of these look familiar?" Sullivan examined the images, quickly pointing to Tyler Westfield. He was present. He was quite assertive until the largest boy intervened. He then pointed to Ethan Drake's photo. "That appears to be the bigger one." The unanticipated testimony notably bolstered the case. Sullivan's interaction probably transpired soon after Ryan's death, potentially as the other teenagers were getting ready to leave the area. The interview space at the county sheriff's department was intentionally plain. It contained a basic table, 4 chairs, and a one-way observation mirror displaying the anxious expression of Jason Morrow. At 17, he appeared younger than his age, his shoulders slumping protectively as he sat next to his mother and their quickly hired lawyer. "Jason," Detective Whitley began, "I'm investigating the death of Ryan Hollister, whose body was found yesterday in Rockwell National Forest." The teenager's eyes widened a little, but he kept a fairly calm demeanor. "That's awful," he stated, his voice even. "Ryan was my friend. We were all heartbroken when he went missing." Whitley responded, opening his folder, "I recall your statement from 4 months ago. You informed Detective Garcia that the 4 of you had arranged a hiking trip to Crestwood Park, but you 3 canceled, allowing Ryan to go unaccompanied." Jason confirmed readily. "That is correct. A family matter arose." Despite this, Whitley spoke steadily, arranging several printed photographs on the table, stating, "We possess photographic proof that all four of you were camping in Rockwell Forest, contrary to the claim of hiking in Crestwood Park." He presented the photos retrieved from Ryan's phone to Jason. These photographs were taken on the date Ryan purportedly went hiking by himself. Jason's complexion visibly paled as he examined the compromising images. A photograph showed four smiling teenagers posing for the camera, with beer cans visible, and Ryan was clearly alive and among the group. "Oh my God," Jason's mother whispered, her hand covering her mouth. His attorney leaned forward, maintaining a professional composure, but visibly shaken. "Where did these come from?" Whitley answered Ryan's phone, presenting additional evidence. A photograph of the recovered device sealed in an evidence bag. The device was found deliberately hidden under rocks close to your campsite, the very campsite where a park ranger observed 3 young men in a red Jeep Wrangler registered to Tyler Westfield's father. Whitley subsequently placed a map on the table, clearly indicating both Crestwood Park and Rockwell Forest. "You directed the police to search an area 20 miles from his actual location. That's more than just a falsehood, Jason. That's intentional deception. My client isn't obligated to address these claims," the lawyer stated, but Jason was already faltering under the pressure of the evidence. "It was an accident," he exclaimed, tears forming in his eyes, as he disregarded his attorney's effort to quiet him with a hand on his arm. "We never intended for any of this to occur. You must believe me." During the following hour, the disturbing reality surfaced through Jason's hesitant admission. The 4 friends had brought a substantial amount of alcohol, consuming it heavily around the campfire late into the night. Ryan and Tyler had a disagreement, Jason recounted, his gaze fixed on the table. It was over something trivial concerning Tyler's girlfriend. The disagreement intensified, eventually becoming physical. Jason stated that Ethan initially attempted to intervene, but then sided with Tyler as the confrontation worsened. Ryan, finding himself at a disadvantage, tried to depart, gathering his possessions and requesting Tyler to drive him to his vehicle. Tyler declined, as he was too intoxicated to operate a car. Ryan stated he would leave on foot and contact his father for transportation. At that point, Ethan pushed him. Ryan fell and struck his head on the fire ring. Significant bleeding occurred, and he showed no signs of movement. The 3 teenagers panicked, understanding Ryan had died, and they were a considerable distance from assistance, under the influence, and illegally present on restricted forest land. According to Jason, Tyler suggested burying him, his voice barely audible. Tyler claimed it was an accident, but no one would believe them, given they had been drinking. They feared they would all go to prison. They had buried Ryan's body away from the campsite, gathered their equipment, and fled. The following morning, they drove Ryan's car to Crestwood Park and abandoned it at the trailhead, fabricating the story that he had gone hiking alone. As evening arrived, all 3 teenagers were apprehended and formally charged. Tyler and Ethan faced charges of manslaughter and evidence tampering, while Jason was charged with accessory after the fact and obstruction of justice. Their elaborate deception had crumbled entirely when confronted with substantial evidence and Jason's thorough confession. "They nearly succeeded," Whitley observed to Lydia, as they watched the 3 being processed. "Without your dog's remarkable skills, Ryan might have stayed lost indefinitely." 3 days following the discovery of Ryan Hollister's body, Lydia stood with Aspen at the border of the forest clearing that had transformed into a temporary memorial. Ryan's parents had been at the location earlier that day, placing flowers and pictures of their son near a large pine tree. "Your dog altered everything," a soft voice said from behind her. Lydia turned to see Elizabeth Hollister, Ryan's mother, walking towards them with her husband James. Lines of grief were visible on their faces, but they maintained a dignified composure. "We wanted to thank you personally," James said, his voice thick with emotion. He spoke of how Aspen found Ryan during a training exercise, and how she wouldn't leave until an investigation was initiated. Lydia responded gently, noticing a lump form in Elizabeth's throat as she knelt beside Aspen. The shepherd remained remarkably still, her typical composed attitude relaxing a little, as Elizabeth's mother softly stroked her head. The moment felt deeply meaningful, a bond existing between the woman who mourned her son and the dog who had ultimately led him back. "For months of uncertainty had been agonizing," Elizabeth murmured. The recurring dreams always centered on him, isolated, adrift, and hoping to be discovered. Now, at long last, we can ensure he receives a fitting burial. Afterward, as the sunset filled the western sky with vivid oranges and pinks, Lydia brought Aspen to their preferred tranquil location, a bluff offering a view of the river valley, a place they frequently visited to find solace at the close of challenging days. The shepherd remained beside his handler, both of them observing the shifting hues in a peaceful silence. The recent events had clearly impacted both of them. Aspen had worked almost 20 hours consecutively during the initial investigation, only stopping when Lydia had insisted. Even now, after being officially released from the case, the shepherd continued to exhibit a sense of watchful readiness, as if her obligation to Ryan wasn't entirely fulfilled. Chief Bennett had contacted them that afternoon with news that the department had received numerous calls and emails commending Aspen's work. The local newspaper featured the headline, "Hero Dog Brings Justice After 4 Months of Silence," with a photo of Aspen at the crime scene, her focused expression reflecting the intensity that had cracked the case. "You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you?" Lydia murmured, rubbing the spot behind Aspen's ears that always elicited an appreciative lean, deliberately breaking the rules to ensure everyone listened. Aspen turned to meet her handler's gaze, those intelligent eyes communicating volumes. Their bond had been tested and proven in the most challenging circumstances, reinforcing what Lydia had always believed. That true partnership went beyond conventional training and rigid protocols. Master Sergeant Calloway called, Lydia told her partner, smiling at the recollection of the conversation. He stated you've made him prouder than any medal he ever received, and that he always believed you were destined for something exceptional. The shepherd's ears rose at the reference to her first trainer, her head tilting a little, seeming to request further information. He will be visiting next month and wishes to see you, bringing some specialized training equipment he has created. At that instant, observing the final light of the day disappear over the valley, Lydia experienced deep appreciation for the intricate series of events that had united them. The Marine who transformed personal sorrow into training remarkable dogs, the challenging shepherd who required the appropriate handler, and the confidence they had fostered which enabled Aspen's unique talents to emerge when it was most crucial. What had previously appeared as stubborn disobedience was shown to be unusual insight, the capacity to understand when human regulations required alteration for a significant objective. Have you ever observed an animal perceive something that humans entirely overlooked? Animals have remarkable instincts that occasionally appear almost supernatural, enabling them to detect things outside human perception. Aspen's extraordinary skill in finding Ryan's grave within a distant forest during a standard training exercise highlights how our canine companions often experience the world in ways we struggle to understand. Consider what you would do if you were Lydia. Should you adhere to established procedures or rely on your dog's intuition? It's understandable to envision the stress she felt when Aspen disregarded training protocols, which could have resulted in embarrassment before her colleagues. That pivotal decision to trust her partner, despite all rational objections, ultimately provided closure for a grieving family and justice for a young man who might otherwise have never been found. If this story of canine heroism touched your heart, please hit that like button to help us reach more dog lovers around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary canine stories, and make sure to press the notification bell so you never miss our new uploads. Please share this video with friends and family who value the incredible skills of working dogs and the unique connection they have with their handlers. Don't miss our previous stories about canine heroes, which are currently playing, including the inspiring account of a police dog who discovered a concealed area, leading to the disruption of an international smuggling operation, and the search and rescue dog who found a lost child during a blizzard despite the failure of all human attempts. Join us tomorrow, at the same time, for another compelling story exploring the extraordinary world of working dogs and their handlers.